was a Protestant movement during the early 19th century that began in upstate New York. The cause of the Second Great Awakening was shifts in theology and in religious thinking. American Christians took it upon themselves to change society. These people are mostly evangelists, which means they seek out people to convert to Christianity. They would do this by holding meetings in a camp-like setting, preaching it to the public. The amount of people going to these meetings would go as high as 2,000 in some cases. This movement appealed mostly to women and the Black Methodist Society, also known as the African Methodist Episcopal Church. This movement spread through Tennessee, Kentucky, and southern Ohio mostly. It gained momentum in 1800, and in 1820, membership grew in Baptist and Methodist congregations. It stimulated the establishment of many Reform movements and increased the amount of evangelical churches. A young man who attended the famous 2,000-person revival in Kentucky in 1808 captured the spirit of these camp meetings activity. He said, "The noise was like the roar of Niagara, the vast sea of human beings seeked to be agitated as if by a storm." He counted 7 ministers, all preaching at one time, some on stumps, others on wagons, some of the people were singing, others playing, and some crying for mercy. A strange sensation came over me. My heart was beating tumultuously, my knees trembled, and my lips quivered, and I felt as though I must fall on the ground. This young man was so moved that he went on to become a Methodist minister. As this quotation suggests, evangelical ministers reached their audience at an emotional level.
The Second Great Awakening was more than a movement. It was a religious revival and helped the emergence of many new Christian denominations. The repopularity of Christianity was brought through the traveling preachers, whom traveled the country and preached the gospel. The impact of the Second Great Awakening was so powerful that it set the basis for many reforms to come. Not only was it important because it brought back religion to many households, but also because it started the Age of Reform. Both blacks and women began to participate in evangelistic revivals associated with the Second Great Awakening at the end of the 18th century. From these revivals grew the roots of both the feminist and the abolitionist movements. Religion became the central theme of 1830s. American Protestants branched off into many different denominations, holding in common the need for meetings and revivals. Peter Cartwright.
Peter Cartwright was born September 1st, 1785 and died September 25th, 1872. He was an American Methodist revivalist in the Midwest, as well as twice an elected legislator in Illinois. Cartwright, a Methodist missionary, helped start the Second Great Awakening, personally baptizing 12,000 converts. Opposed to slavery, Cartwright moved from Kentucky to Illinois and was elected to the lower house of the Illinois General Assembly in 1828 and 1832. In 1846, Abraham Lincoln defeated Cartwright for a seat in the United States Congress. As a Methodist circuit rider, Cartwright rode circuits in Kentucky and Illinois, as well as Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. His autobiography in 1856 made him nationally prominent.
Cartwright was converted at a camp meeting and joined the Methodist Episcopal Church. He became a preacher in 1802. In 1824, he helped found the Illinois Annual Conference. He was a towering figure of frontier Methodism and one of the most colorful and energetic preachers Methodism has ever produced. To him, preaching was a divine calling rather than a profession. His conversion of others to Methodism, rather than his own education, gained him admission to the ministry and verified his methods. William Miller.
William Miller was a lecturer on the Second Great Awakening. He started as a captain in the War of 1812. In the Battle of Plattsburgh, which he commanded, he won despite the odds. Miller thought it was the will of God and turned onto religion as a primary aspect in his life. Miller preached the second coming of Christ, and he called it the Advent. Miller thought Jesus would rise again in 1843. The Adventists followed Miller's ideas, and they believed in pre-millennialism, meaning the events in the book of Revelation would start after the return of Christ. This movement was mostly prominent in the Northeast U.S.
The public preachings of William Miller dates from autumn of 1831. He continued to be distressed regarding his duty to go and tell the results of his studies to the world. His motto was, "Go and tell it to the world." However, his prediction about the coming of Christ was false. After the failure of Miller's expectations for October 22nd, 1844, the date became known as the Miller's Great Disappointment, and a spirit of weeping overcame the nation. It was nothing like the country ever experienced before. Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith was the Mormon prophet and founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He claimed that he was called by God to lay down the foundation for the church because the other denominations had fallen short of their faith. At age 17, he was visited 5 times by the angel Moroni, who revealed to Joseph the existence of the golden plates from which the Book of Mormon was translated, and told him his role in restoring the gospel. He later went to upstate New York, where Joseph went to Cumorah, the name of the hill, and found golden plates written by Ether, Mormon, Lehi, and Nephi. Also discovered at the site was a breastplate named the Urim and Thummim, a pair of stones that Smith said assisted him in his translation of the ancient plates. Unfortunately, he was not allowed to remove the artifacts from the site immediately. He was directed to return to the site at each autumn equinox for 4 years until 1827. He led his newfound followers to what he preached to be the Promised Land, but on the way there he died and Brigham Young became his successor, eventually settling in Salt Lake City.
Even though the Second Great Awakening started in 1780, it didn't take off until the 1820s. At the peak of the development was the Lutheran Church, following by the Episcopal, Congregational, Catholic, Baptist, and finishing off as the Methodist Church. Second Great Awakening also inspired a lot of artworks depicting religious ideas, or the camp meetings at which the Gospels were taught. Most of the artwork started out as sketches at those meetings. One of such paintings was made by J. Mays Burbank, which he presented to the Royal Society in London in 1939. Peter Cartwright, William Miller, and Joseph Smith were all motivated by religious revelation. This led them to become famous for spreading religion and their beliefs. Joseph Smith created the Church of Latter-day Saints, the beginning of Mormonism, and also wrote the Book of Mormon because of his own spiritual revelation. William Miller led the Adventists because of his strong belief that Christ would return on October 22, 1844. Peter Cartwright created the Circuit Riders, also known as traveling preachers. They all strive to spread belief and cause others to have the same revelation and religious enlightening they had felt. Jesus Camp is a 2006 American documentary film directed by Rachel Grady and Heidi Ewing about a charismatic Christian summer camp where children spend their summers learning and practicing their prophetic gifts and being taught that they can take back America for Christ. Jesus Camp is about Kids on Fire School of Ministry, a charismatic Christian summer camp located just outside Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and run by Becky Fisher and her ministry, Kids in Ministry International. The film focuses on 3 children who attended the camp in the summer of 2005, Levi, Rachel, and Tori. All 3 children are already very devoted Christians. At the camp, Fisher stresses the need for children to purify themselves in order to be part of the army of God. She strongly believes that the children need to be in the forefront of turning America towards conservative Christian values. She also feels that Christians need to focus on training their kids since the enemy, Islam, is focused on training theirs. Throughout the movie, there are cutscenes to a debate between Fisher and Mike Papantonio, an attorney and a radio talk show host for Air America Radio's Ring of Fire. Papantonio questions Fisher's motives for focusing her ministry efforts on children. Fisher explains that she does not believe that people are able to choose their belief system once they pass childhood, and that it is important that they be indoctrinated in evangelical Christian values from a young age. Fisher also explains that democracy is flawed and designed to destroy itself because we have to give everyone equal freedom. The documentary also earned some awards. Michael Smith of the Tulsa World gave the film 3 stars out of 4, describing it as impressive in its even-handed presentation, straightforward and revealing. What would you say was the purpose of this documentary?
The purpose of the documentary was to make known the intensity of the evangelist movement.
I want to see young people who are as committed to the cause of Jesus Christ as the young people are to the cause of Islam. I want to see them as radically laying down their lives for the gospel as they are over in Pakistan and in Israel and Palestine and all those different places, because we have, excuse me, but we have the truth.
What argument do the producers bring up?
The arguments and assertions made in Jesus' camp are that children are easily targeted and used for radical movements and taken advantage of by the bombastic preacher of the Church of Evangelism.
They are so usable in Christianity. This is a generation that's going to stand for purity and righteousness and holiness, and you're going to serve the Lord all the days of your life. Take these prophecies and do what the Apostle Paul said and make war with them.
How is the presented argument supported? The argument is supported through the presented images in the documentary. The images show the extreme actions taken by the evangelists to not only convert people by force, but also force their ideas and beliefs into the society and government. How would you describe the attitude of the producer? The attitude of the producers tried to remain neutral on the matter. However, they depicted the evangelists as a powerful group of people who use their power and children to influence the outcomes of political elections and disputes, and that their ideas aren't always balancing or logical. Are there any cinematic techniques used that help produce the point? Yes, the main ones are angle of framing, space or composition, talking directly to the camera, fading out, hard light, rack focus, and extreme close-ups. They are important because they dramatize and highlight the argument or the point which the producers were trying to convey throughout the documentary. By the use of these techniques, we were able to see the main parts of the directors wanted us to see. How does the structure help the purpose of this documentary? The structure helps bring around the focus when we start to lose ourselves in the controversies brought by the film. Because we have the preacher reflecting on the previously showed camp activities and sermons, we are able to see her sincerity and the extent of how out of control she is, which drives the point of how much power she has and enjoys home. To malleable minds, her ideas may overturn people. However, as the jumps back to the radio talk show, we are reminded of the actual purpose of the documentary, which is to inform. In George Dworsky's critical analysis of the documentary Jesus Camp, he explains how the kids don't have a chance. Their parents throw them into evangelized society at a young age, jamming it into their heads that the way they live and think is normal. During his analysis, he seems mostly concerned with the children, which are the main weapons of such churches and ideologies. He says that they, the children, deserve at least that much, a chance at school. However, 75% of homeschooled children are evangelical, meaning that they never get to know anything besides what their parents pry into their minds. Not only does this analysis take the kids' lives into concern, but it also shows how the children are being used and trained from an early age by these churches.
What if you had to go to a school where the teacher said creationism is stupid, and you're stupid if you believe in it?
I think they should.
Well, or what if you had to go to a school where your teacher said evolution is stupid, and you're stupid if you believe in it?
I wouldn't mind that.
You wouldn't mind it.
All right, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance first now that everybody is, before we get on to something else. Jenny? Christian, will you stand up, please? Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag, to whose Savior, to whose kingdom it stands, one brotherhood, uniting all Christians in unity and in love.
Okay. Put your hand on the Bible.
I pledge allegiance to the Bible, God's holy word. I will make it a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I will hide its word in my heart that I might not sin against God.
We have a population, 25% of the American population right now describe themselves as evangelicals. That's about 80 million people. They're very tenacious, and they elbow their way into positions of power in America. That is the MO of a group that is committed to, like I say, building a government that they're comfortable with. In the end, it's going to come like a thief in the night. There's this slow chipping away at the separation between church and state. Let me ask you this. How do we ignore that all of a sudden we're creating children's soldiers for the Republican Party?
The Second Great Awakening spread religion and conversions like the one seen in Jesus' camp. In Jesus' camp, the society was both targeted personally or individually by being walked up to and directly told about how Christ will save them, while others were targeted as a whole by passing out the flyers on the street. This image shows a group lecture the preacher is full of passion towards converting souls, akin to the passion of the children in Jesus' camp.
Man, the more I hear about this, it just gets crazier and crazier.